Welcome to EdLeader with your host, Dr. Rob Jackson. Join Dr. Jackson for conversations and reflections on improving educational leadership from the classroom to the boardroom and beyond. Educational leadership is an ever-evolving opportunity to make a real and lasting difference in the lives of students, parents, and the community. And now, here's your host, Dr. Rob Jackson.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the EdLeader podcast. I'm your host, Rob Jackson, and I want to thank you for spending time with me today. I hope that in every episode you hear a values-based, people-centric servant leadership philosophy permeating every conversation. In our world, where stories abound of frequent turnover of principals and superintendents, where aspiring leaders worry about whether they'll be able to last in the profession, it is worth taking the time to learn from those who have been able to sustain in leadership. With 11 years as a principal and now in my 7th year as a superintendent, I want you to know that you can serve long-term as a leader if you live out your values, if you approach every decision based on what is right for children, and if you never stop learning and growing. Today's guest is a model of leadership that lasts and one of the kindest people I know. Let's get to it. Our guest today began his teaching career in 1983 after graduating from North Carolina State University with a bachelor's degree in industrial arts education. He taught middle school students and coached on the high school level before becoming an administrator in 1998. He earned his master's degree in industrial education from Western Carolina University and is a graduate of the Principal's Executive Program at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and earned his doctorate in educational leadership from Western Carolina. He's a former trustee for Blue Ridge Community College and a 2011 recipient of the Peak Performer Award at Western Carolina University, and also a 2017 recipient of the William and Ida Friday Award from the Friday Institute at North Carolina State University for innovation. He was selected as the co-chair for the Pandemic Remote Learning Task Force of the North Carolina Superintendents Association. A native of the county he serves, he was named superintendent in 2009. He is a former North Carolina CTE Director of the Year, a former Western Region Superintendent of the Year. He is one of the longest tenured superintendents in North Carolina. He is my friend, my colleague, my hero, and one of the kindest people you will meet. Please help me welcome Transylvania County Public Schools Superintendent, Dr. Jeff McDaris. Dr. Jeff McDaris, I have waited for this day way too long. I am so excited to be able to have this conversation with you. You are one of my heroes in the superintendency, just an incredible colleague, an incredible friend. Thank you for spending time with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I am deeply honored. I feel like we're sort of bridging east and west. This one. This is great. We're too far apart. We share so many of the same passions, and it's just really an honor to be here.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And for our listeners in other states and these days around the world, which is a bit surprising to me, Jeff, to even think about the listeners we have in now 20 countries, North Carolina is a beautiful state, a really unique state. It's very long, east to west or west to east. And my good friend and colleague, Dr. McDaris, is in the western part of our state in a beautiful mountainous area. I am as far east in the state as you can get on the Crystal Coast next to the ocean. And so our state, as beautiful as it is, goes from the mountains to the sea. And I think you and I about have it covered, don't we, buddy?
We have it about covered, and we both are in two very beautiful parts. My favorite magazine is Our State Magazine, and I think for the obvious reasons, it highlights, I know we have some people that are from outside of North Carolina listening, but it really highlights the diversity and geography and everything else across our state, and we're very fortunate to be here.
Absolutely. Jeff, one of the things that I love about you, and I'd like to highlight to our listeners, your Twitter account, and I'll put this in our show notes for our listeners so you'll have a direct link. But Dr. Jeff McDaris, his Twitter account is at SuperTCS. I love following you on Twitter because every single morning I can count on a message of positivity, typically telling me that all the public school systems in the state are the best of the best. And in Transylvania County, there is no better educational opportunity than the public schools of Transylvania. Why is it so important to you to share that daily positive, encouraging message?
Well, we certainly in our world have opportunities for perhaps some negativity or even some, feeling a little bad about some things. And I think it's important for me, and I really believe this. I would not do it if I did not totally believe in the traditional public schools in our state, the job that we're all doing, the opportunities for our students. I am a product of the traditional public schools. And in fact, even though I have been in other places, I'm incredibly blessed and fortunate to be a product of Transylvania County schools.
Wow.
And would not be here where I am if it were not for the art and craft and care and passion of so many teachers and administrators and community members over the years. And so I like to send out a message every morning among many messages that we do. I believe we have the very best schooling in my county, and I'm incredibly proud that we're part of North Carolina Traditional Public Schools because I believe that we are the foundation for North Carolina.
There's no question. And Jeff, similar to your story, even though I'm a 6.5 hour, 7 hour drive away from you now, we grew up in very close proximity. I was there in Buncombe County in the mountains. And so like you, and I don't know exactly about your school, but I attended a pretty rural school, a small school, and my family and my mountain family, I'm very proud of. We hadn't had anybody go to college, but because of public school teachers and public schools, I have an incredible life today and have had many opportunities. And so joining you in sounding the call of just how amazing our public schools are is something that's very important to me as well.
It is. My elementary school, which is now used by our local community college, it was a very small elementary school. We did not have kindergarten in those days. I'm pre-kindergarten, but we did have first through sixth grade, and those teachers were so special. And I grew up in the Cedar Mountain area of my county, which is very rural. It's near the South Carolina line. And I think about growing up, and I think about the opportunities and riding that yellow bus every day all the way down the mountain into town. And I would not go back and trade any of it for any reason, because I believe it's helped make me who I am today. And so I'm just incredibly blessed and thankful for that.
Absolutely. And, and about you, I appreciate the fact that because you receive those blessings, you feel compelled to share that story and continue to share the story of public schools and the school system you serve. And that's so very important, because I certainly recognize in an era of school choice that parents want to make the very best choice they can for their children. They want the very best for their sons and daughters, and we want that for them as well. But if we don't tell our story, they may not hear that story. And so hearing how public schools changed the trajectory of your life, or at least gave you access to opportunities and my life and countless others, I just think is so important, particularly when the world is where it is today.
It is important. And, people make choices for what they feel is the best for their family. And I certainly support that. I want to tell my story because I want them to be interested in enough in that they'll give us a try. I think that's the important thing. Give us a try. And no entity is perfect. But if there are things that we can learn to do even better, they are a helpful voice for us to do that better. And so I like to tell that story because I want people to know that where I came from. I look at some of the challenges that many of our families are going through, families who grew up here or families who have moved in. And, that makes us even richer to know about the history, but also to give us a chance and to try to learn things and to share ideas and to beg, borrow, and steal from each other those ideas and to implement them and to make it a good experience for all of our children.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And again, for our listeners, if you want a daily dose of sunshine, you need to follow at Super TCS, because he will wish you a very pleasant good morning. And it's always a nice way to start. Well, Jeff, you are one of the senior superintendents in our state. You may be top 5 in terms of years of experience as a superintendent. You're certainly top 10 out of the 115 superintendents in our state. And in an era where superintendents don't seem to last very long, there seems to be a churn among superintendents, you have not only lasted, but succeeded and done incredibly well. What's the secret? As I think about our young leaders who may aspire to the superintendency or who may aspire to leadership, what is it that has given you staying power?
Well, I've thought about that, and I don't know that it's anything unique. I think it is a combination of many factors that all of us share in our roles as superintendent, and that's to understand the community, but also to understand what's going on outside of our community in the world and why that's important, and trying in a not to for me personally, not to just push something on someone as much as to make the community aware of the possibilities out there. We've changed, we've grown, we know that it's a different world. Digital. It's very interesting. I know that the pandemic has forced us all to embrace Zoom and Google Meet and all those tools, but at the same time, many of us, we were doing this before. We have learned to try to refine that. Years ago, I worked for a superintendent, Dr. Terry Holliday, and I remember one of the things you learn from the Baldrige criteria of continuous improvement is the more you learn, the more you realize that you didn't know, and you want to try to improve upon that. And then, of course, I picked up wonderful things from other superintendents. My predecessors, Dr. Lyda, her ability to interact, coming from a farm background to interact with students, and for me, and with the population. For me, it's trying to understand the passions of the people that are not only on your board but your teachers, and just really being just being very forthright and being very sincere and being visible and being out there, being involved in other things in the community. I think that's very important because we are the center of the community. There is no question that no matter what is going on anywhere in our county, that your school system is the center of the community. That's the place where the parents congregate. That's the last place now that you can still find people of all different backgrounds coming together to support everything from athletics to a band concert. And so you have to immerse yourself in the community, but then you also have to think about what's going on in other places and not be afraid to incorporate some of those ideas, not just for the sake of doing something new, but what do you see on the horizon for your students and how they can position themselves to be very successful. I would be thrilled if everything that we did here were leading to a result where our graduates could then turn right around after they completed college, whether it be 2-year or 4-year or a military or apprenticeship, and be able to then work in our community. Unfortunately, that's not realistic. We know in our world. So we are trying to educate our students for the world. And if they're able to come back here, that's wonderful. But at the same time, we want to equip them. And I think you got to tell that part of the story to the parents. It's a tough thing sometimes to let go, but you've got to tell that story that, we're sending people out from our school system to be successful elsewhere and to share that story, because you never know who's going to come back or what message they may deliver that will encourage someone to move in.
Absolutely. And I hope for our young leaders and aspiring leaders that you go back and listen to that several times, because there's so much wisdom in what you just shared, Jeff. And so I'd like to unpack that a little bit, particularly as you started off, as you were talking about communication And in fact, you have 3 C's that I know that you use to promote leadership. And those 3 C's are conversation, community, and credibility. And I'd like to kind of talk about those 3 C's, but I want to start with this first one, that communication piece, because one of the things that I've noticed about you, Jeff, and in many ways I try to model myself after you, is that you certainly communicate what needs to be communicated, but you do it in a gentle way. You are respectful in all of your communication. You don't cause people to suddenly have their guard up because you're being combative, which doesn't mean that you're weak at all, because you get your point across. But when you do it so respectfully and in such a caring manner, folks listen. And there's got to be something in that that also contributes to staying power for superintendents and leaders.
I think something that we hear very often, all of us in our world, and perhaps we have to remind ourselves of why it's important, and that is to think just a moment before reacting. I think we all have a passionate heart, deeply passionate heart, and I know that superintendents do. We are very much committed to what we do, and we believe things, and we feel strongly about them, and we want others to understand why we believe that. For me personally, I find it very helpful sometimes if I will just pause for a moment, because in the heat of a passionate moment, you don't want the context of what you're trying to convey to be clouded by a passionate moment that is misconstrued and maybe causes the focus to go in a different direction. And I have to remind myself of that because I am passionate, but at the same time, I want to think about some things that that have been taught to me as I grew up, and I try to remember. I'll give you one example. One of my favorite stories for a very long time is a story of former President Reagan and former House Speaker Tip O'Neill, who were totally different. They were on 2 different ends of the political spectrum. And something that I've always remembered, even before any concerns, that we've had with passions lately on any issue, one way or another. Years ago, I remember the story that they would occasionally, when they were both in town, get together, perhaps on a Friday, just for a few moments, as 2 Irishmen, and share just some conversation. That is a level of decorum that I don't think we can underestimate. Right. Because we are going to disagree on many things, but finding some type of common moment. And when I'm really passionate about something, Rob, I sometimes have to remind myself, okay, now, Jeff, let's just think for just a moment how that's going to be received. I certainly am incredibly fortunate. I married my high school sweetheart. She has stuck with me. And so she is an incredible sounding board. And then I have some very close friends that I can say things to. And, how does it sound? You being one of them. And, that's very helpful to have that circle of people that you can, really kind of let down everything and just say, just the raw passion. But when you're sending that message out to everyone else, it's important to remember decorum, because we all are wanting the very best for not only our children, but for our communities. And even though we're going to disagree sometimes on how to achieve that best, we can't arrive at a point where we can work together if we are in an attack mode, if nothing else. And so I try to make myself, that is something that I try to work very hard on to think about, how is this going to be received, to take a breath, and to sometimes pausing 30 seconds before you hit send on the keyboard is a very important thing to remember.
You're not kidding. It'll save a whole lot of grief on the back end, that's for sure. Well, for our listeners, if you are not aware of the story that my friend Jeff kind of just pointed towards, and that being the relationship between President Ronald Reagan and Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill, I would certainly encourage you to spend some time Googling that, because they were diametrically opposed politically, but were real strong examples of working together for the good of our country, quite frankly. And that's a wonderful example. And I appreciate you highlighting that, particularly as we have had many instances of passion where maybe we weren't working together as well as we should have. And you mentioned there community. And so your second C, first being conversation, that second C, community, and you equate that to relationship. Talk to me about building relationships and how you approach that in your leadership.
I think it's so important to know the history of your community because there are reasons why people love your schools. There are reasons why people may be apprehensive of your schools. There are people that are struggling daily with different things. To understand just the dynamics of your community and to understand that and to gain that appreciation of the rich variety. I will give you an example of my community, which probably mirrors what's happened to a lot of other places. We've undergone tremendous changes over the last 20, 21 years. When I was living here in this community and going to high school in the late 70s, we had 3 large manufacturing plants in a county at that time that was much smaller than it is now in terms of population. But at their height, they had approximately 4,400 manufacturing jobs. Wow. We had the highest blue collar wages in the state of North Carolina. And then, things changed and those businesses left and we lost all that and we had to change and regroup. And what's interesting about that, the expectations for your schools don't change, but some of the support mechanisms that you once had have changed. And how did that affect the community? The community has gotten older now and people have moved in from other places and trying to understand them because they really want to maybe call it a nostalgic view. I don't know, but they really want to think about what was best about their experience when they were in school. And they want that for young people. I think of our African-American community, Rob. When I was growing up, there was perhaps being in a small rural mountain county, it may not have been considered as large as other places, but we had a very vibrant middle class that really underwent some just dramatic and heart-wrenching changes as the job market changed. And that's something that I think is a real concern that we all need to know. Why do people have some concerns? And you've got to go back and understand the community and why that is, and to be able to establish yourself as a credible commentator on that, because it has changed people's lives. And now we're revamping. Certainly tourism is incredibly important for us. But that's not the only thing. You want to be diverse. And so I find that I find that being able to have those conversations with everyone, whether it be over a cup of coffee at Bojangles or it be at an event at Brevard College where there's some people that are incredibly well-traveled around our world, you have to be able to maneuver into both of those areas, because your number one goal is to try to position your school system to be the very best it can be. And so part of that's understanding the community and its challenges, its successes, and to make everyone feel like their part of the community is just as important as every other part, historically, culturally, socially. And that is a never-ending work. I certainly have not arrived. That's something that has to, it demands that you never forget about that importance.
Absolutely. And I can't imagine anybody who does that work or is as passionate about that work as you are, particularly with really honoring all of the past in our community from all of the various groups who've been a part of our community, and bringing that forward and amplifying those voices where we have the opportunity. As superintendents, as ed leaders, we often have access to meetings and to conversations, whether it's at the local college with dignitaries or world travelers, as you mentioned, or at Bojangles over a cup of coffee, or standing in the grocery store, throughout the community. And in those moments, we have to have your third C. So we've talked about conversation, we've talked about community, and your third C is credibility. And you equate that to honesty and caring. Share with me, how do you establish credibility in all of those various groups? Because they can be very different groups, but still you have the opportunity to be there, to be in conversation. How do you establish credibility, Jeff?
Being involved. You want to, if you want the community to do different things, you have to have a level of involvement. Over the years, I guess the best way that I could answer that is, over the years, I've tried to be involved in everything from Little League Baseball. In fact, I will joke with you very quickly. One year, many years ago, when my oldest son was younger, I was the player agent. Some of you out there listening, you'll understand this. I was the player agent in charge of the draft for Little League Baseball. And I remember telling my superintendent at the time that, with all due respect, I believe that I had the most powerful position in the county. But you want to get some passion going. But the reality is to do that. Church basketball league, being involved, playing in rec leagues before I got a little bit too old to do that, being involved in the chamber, being involved in different committees that are going on. For many years, I was privileged to serve on the Mountain Area Workforce Development Board. I also was very blessed to be a trustee for a while at our local community college and reaching out to these people. And so all that's part of credibility. It's like, understanding how those parts work together to make your community better, but also being involved. It doesn't mean that everyone has to be in those same exact roles, but it does mean being out there and being informed and understanding how your community works together in the partnerships, and trying to immerse yourself into all those different activities, attending very important events, letting students see you at ball games, going to band concerts. Those are all the things that establish your level of credibility, because that shows that you do indeed not only care about your school system, but you care about your community. And then the other thing is, quite frankly, when mistakes are made, and they happen sometimes, because we are all human, we all have our flaws. Every one of us, whether it be as an individual or as a system or entity, when we have mistakes, we have to acknowledge those mistakes. And, sometimes it's a very powerful thing to make a sincere apology. And then afterward, what are you going to do to try to make it better? And I think we have to remember that, because if there is anyone out there who has done everything perfectly, or if your entity that you represent has done everything perfectly and handled things well, I need to meet you, because it's certainly not me. We all have our different beliefs, Rob, but I will tell you, I don't believe that God makes junk. And so I tell young people that you are an important person, and wherever you are, I'm going to believe in you. And it's the biggest thing for me, it sounds kind of corny and old fashioned, but the biggest thing for me is to be able to see a graduate walk across that stage or that lawn and look them in the eyes and to be able to shake their hand. That is a tremendous accomplishment. And to me, that's all part of credibility. It's just doing those things that show that you truly care, you're sincere, that you try to make it better, and you work with people as you can to try to make it better.
Absolutely. Jeff, I tell you, I've just been sitting here smiling and nodding my head and bouncing up and down, because you are absolutely right. And I do hope that those who are aspiring to leadership or new to leadership will really spend some time thinking through this wisdom you've shared, because at the end of the day, in some ways it sounds pretty simplistic, but if you are a good person trying your very best, if you're vulnerable enough to say, I made a mistake, and then take action to make sure you don't repeat that mistake, if you treat people with respect, good things happen. And not just for the individual and their career, much more important than that, good things happen for the young people that we're so blessed to serve and their families in our community. Jeff McDaris, you are truly one of my heroes. I absolutely love following you. I love being a follower of @SuperTCS. I love the message you share, and I want you to know You are making a difference in many lives, including mine. Jeff, thank you for spending time with us today.
Well, thank you it is an honor, and thank you, Rob. I mean, I feel like we're partners, we're brothers in this field, and we really are in this thing together. And that's for all our brothers and sisters in similar roles across this state and other states. And so it's an honor to be here, and we just need to figure out a way to get our county geographically closer. And if I can figure that out, I'm going to really be excited about that.
We need some sort of time travel device or snap our fingers and we can instantly be transported, because I would certainly love to be there over a cup of coffee at Bojangles with you, my friend.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Jeff, best wishes to you and your school system. Again, thank you for spending time with us on the EdLeader podcast.
Thank you, and best wishes to everyone out there.
I hope that you enjoyed our time today with Dr. McDaris. His leadership emphasis on conversation, community, and credibility certainly highlight the secret to his success as a leader. Don't forget that you can find show notes for today's show and links to all the conversations we have had with outstanding ed leaders at drrobjackson.com. Thank you for spending time with me today, and thank you for all that you do for every student, every teacher, and every staff member. You are making a difference. If no one else has told you, I want you to know that I believe in you. Good day.
Thank you for listening to the EdLeader podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and consider leaving a review with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts so that we may continue to grow the EdLeader community. We hope that you have enjoyed your time with Dr. Jackson. Until next time.